For years, whispers followed Prince Andrew like a shadow. Rumors of a secret child, hidden behind palace doors. The royals denied. The press speculated. But now, there's no escaping it. A DNA test has shattered the silence and confirmed what many feared, or secretly hoped. The results are in, and they're real. This isn't just gossip anymore. It's science. Cold. Unforgiving. Final. The monarchy, already shaken by scandal, now faces one of its most personal reckonings yet. The headlines are exploding, the internet's on fire, and one question remains. What happens when royal bloodlines can no longer hide from the truth? The whisper that turned into a roar. It started small, just a whisper. A passing comment, barely noticed. But in the world of royalty, even the softest rumor can roar like thunder. One sentence echoed louder than the rest. Prince Andrew has a secret child. At first it was dismissed. Another tabloid tale, another shot in the dark. But this one had legs. It began to move. And then it ran. Soon it was everywhere. Online forums lit up. Social media turned the rumor into a trending topic. Armchair detectives began piecing together timelines and grainy photos. News outlets, always hungry for a royal scandal, jumped in with sensational headlines. Hidden heir? The Duke's secret past? The fire had started, and it was impossible to put out. Why did this particular rumor catch fire so quickly? Some say it's because of Andrew's history, his ties to scandal, his fall from grace, and that infamous interview made him an easy target. People were already suspicious. All it took was the idea of a hidden heir to send speculation into overdrive. The theory took on a life of its own. Stories of a young adult with vague royal features. A mysterious mother. Payments. Silence. Hints of a cover-up. None of it confirmed, but none of it denied either. And in the vacuum of palace silence, imagination filled in the blanks. Whispers became questions. Questions became demands. Was this just gossip? Or was something real hiding behind the noise? The pressure built. Commentators weighed in. Former palace staff hinted ever so carefully that there were things best left buried. And suddenly, the question became more than curiosity. It became obsession. Then came the turning point. A voice stepped forward. A person claiming to be the missing piece. They weren't chasing headlines. They wanted truth. And they wanted a DNA test. That's when everything changed. Because a DNA test isn't gossip. It's science. It's final. It doesn't blink in the face of power. And now, the public wasn't asking politely. They were demanding answers. Could a simple strand of genetic code unravel a royal legacy? The palace stayed silent. No comment, no confirmation, no denial. Just a wall of silence as the world kept talking. But silence, in this case, didn't protect, it provoked. And the longer it lasted, the louder the whisper became. Until it wasn't a whisper anymore. It was a roar. And Prince Andrew? He was suddenly back in the spotlight, not for a royal duty, but for a paternity test that could rewrite everything. Coming up next, the face behind the claim, and the emotional storm they walked into. Meet the mysterious claimant. The name didn't matter at first. It was the story that caught attention. a quiet individual from outside the royal radar suddenly stepped into the light, claiming something extraordinary: that they were Prince Andrew's biological child, born decades ago, raised far from the crown, and now ready to seek the truth. No headlines could capture the emotions behind that kind of claim. This wasn't about fame, not at first. It was about identity, about belonging. A person who had spent their life staring into mirrors, wondering why certain questions never had answers, finally took the boldest step imaginable, demanding a DNA test from a royal. The world wanted a name, a face, details. Who was this person? Where had they come from? The media dug deep, but what they found was someone surprisingly quiet. Raised by a single mother, educated but private, someone who claimed to have always felt disconnected, as if a part of their life had been hidden from them. And according to their story, it had. The paternity claim didn't come out of nowhere. It came after years of whispers, family tension, and a single conversation that changed everything. A deathbed confession from their mother. A story of a brief but powerful connection to Prince Andrew. A time when protocol was already cracking and silence could be bought. People took sides immediately. Some believed, some mocked. The tabloids had a field day. "The royal that time forgot," one headline blared. "DNA bombshell incoming," another warned. But behind the headlines was a real person, one who had waited their whole life for clarity. There was fear, too, not just about being wrong, but about being right. What would it mean if the test confirmed the claim? What would it mean to be a royal, technically yet unwanted, unacknowledged, invisible to history? And if they weren't Andrew's child, then what would they be? A footnote? A fraud? This wasn't just a court case. It was personal. It was emotional. It was about rewriting one life and possibly shaking the foundation of others. And once the public got wind of the demand for a DNA test, everything escalated. Supporters rallied online, demanding transparency from the palace. Skeptics rolled their eyes, calling it another attempt to cash in on royal fame. But for the claimant, none of that mattered. All they wanted was one thing: truth. And that truth now rested in a test tube. Andrew's reputation under fire. Prince Andrew was no stranger to scandal. His reputation had already suffered blow after blow. The Epstein saga, the infamous interview, his withdrawal from royal duties. But just when things had started to quiet down, the DNA claim brought everything crashing back. For years, the palace had worked hard to contain the damage, to protect the monarchy's image. But nothing prepared them for this. A paternity test wasn't just a headline. It was potentially a legal earthquake. If true, it wouldn't just hurt Andrew. It would tarnish the royal name. Almost immediately, media channels ran wall-to-wall coverage. Old photos resurfaced. Former friends were called in for interviews. Every inch of Andrew's past was re-examined. The public didn't just want the truth. They wanted accountability. The phrase, "not again," echoed across breakfast tables and online threads. This wasn't the first royal scandal, but it might be one of the most personal. The idea that a royal could abandon a child was too raw, too real. People weren't talking about politics. They were talking about betrayal. Royal experts debated the consequences. If the claim was proven, would Andrew be forced to step down from even his minimal engagements? Could this be grounds for legal action? Would inheritance laws come into play? The silence from Buckingham Palace only fueled the fire. Monarchy defenders urged patience. They warned against rushing to judgment, but the damage was already done. The name Prince Andrew was once again surrounded by doubt, drama, and disgrace. Inside the royal household, tension mounted. Advisors scrambled. Communications teams met behind closed doors. Even other royals, known for keeping their distance from Andrew's controversies, were reportedly deeply concerned. The pressure wasn't just on Andrew, it was on the entire Windsor image. And still, Andrew said nothing. In the court of public opinion, silence wasn't strength, it was guilt. The world waited, not for a denial, not even for an apology, just for one thing: the test. The race toward DNA testing. The clock was ticking, and the pressure was mounting. As calls for a DNA test grew louder, legal teams and royal advisors were left scrambling. This wasn't a simple swab and go. This was a delicate operation involving power, protocol, and intense public scrutiny. First, legal standing had to be established. Who could request the test? Who could refuse it? The claimant had filed a formal demand through their lawyer, citing emotional distress and the right to know their parentage. But for Andrew, the decision wasn't just legal, it was legacy-threatening. The palace went quiet. Meetings were held behind closed doors. Should Andrew comply? Would refusal be seen as an admission of guilt? And if he did agree, how could they control the process? Privacy was everything. If a sample was taken, it needed chain of custody. Royal protection officers had to be involved. No leaks, no tampering, no chance of manipulation. But keeping things quiet in a case like this? Nearly impossible. Lab selection became critical. It couldn't be just any lab. It had to be independent, credible, and secure. Scientists were briefed. Legal teams hovered. Every step had to be documented. And still, the countdown continued. Media outlets began running daily segments. The test tracker. Fans and critics alike followed every update. Rumors swirled. Had Andrew already taken the test? Was he delaying on purpose? Why hadn't the palace made a statement? Pressure mounted. The public was hungry for answers. Every hour without a response only made them hungrier. Paparazzi camped outside the testing facility. Reporters called in favors. Leaks were feared. Every courier envelope became a source of speculation. And through it all, one question echoed. Would the DNA test finally reveal the truth, or just ignite a whole new storm? Inside the DNA lab, far from the flashing, cameras and palace gates, a quiet room became the center of a royal storm. Inside the DNA lab, sterile white walls held secrets more explosive than any press release. Scientists worked methodically, but everyone knew this wasn't just another paternity test. This was royal. The samples arrived under heavy security. One swab belonged to the claimant. The other, from Prince Andrew, was quietly collected under strict supervision. Double verification. Chain of custody protocols. Every step had to be flawless. One mistake could trigger a global scandal. Technicians wore gloves. Vials were scanned and logged. The air in the lab felt charged. Every worker understood the stakes. This wasn't about science alone. It was about legacy. Royal blood. A lineage that stretched back centuries. And now, all of it was being questioned. The analysis began with STRs, short tandem repeats, the genetic markers that hold the truth to biological relationships. These markers don't lie. They don't care about titles or scandals. They simply match. Or they don't. Machines hummed quietly, results printed out line by line. Each match, a possible link. Each mismatch, a wall. The probability was calculated, analyzed, cross-checked. And through it all, the tension never eased. The scientists said little. Their job wasn't to speculate, it was to confirm. But whispers passed between lab techs in the hallway. It's real. They actually tested him. The numbers are close. Back in the main room, the final report was printed. A sealed envelope was prepared. No email, no digital copies, only one copy, signed and delivered by hand. Royal protocol demanded nothing less. And as that envelope left the lab, one question hung in the air. What truth did it carry? And what would it break? Key DNA terms explained. The moment the DNA process began, it wasn't just about swabs and samples. It was science at its most precise. Yet, that precision hides a world of complexity. And if people were waiting for clarity, they needed to understand the terms that decide fates. The first key phrase, STR markers. Short tandem repeats. Think of them like genetic fingerprints. Each person has a unique combination, passed down from their parents. In a paternity test, scientists look for shared markers between the alleged father and the child. The more that match, the stronger the case. Then comes the probability of paternity. You've heard the number before, 99.9. But what does it really mean? It means that based on the genetic match, there's a 99.9% chance that the man is the biological father. Not a guess, not a maybe. Cold, mathematical certainty. But even in a lab, things can get messy. Mutations can alter results slightly. Lab errors, while rare, can cast doubt. That's why multiple scientists verify every step. And when the test is tied to a royal name, the scrutiny is doubled. Triple-checked, blinded, secured. False positives? Almost impossible if the sample is real. But if someone swaps a swab or tampers with evidence, all bets are off. That's why royal testing follows strict chain of custody rules. One break in the chain, and the result loses credibility. The public wanted truth, but they also needed to trust the process. And in this case, trust was fragile. As the results were sealed and sent, a storm of questions loomed. Would the public even accept the findings? Or would conspiracy theories drown out science? The stage was set. The data was in. And the next moment would be irreversible. The moment of truth. Test results arrive. The envelope arrived without warning. A single sealed document. No flashy fanfare. No announcement. Just a quiet handover between the lab director and the palace legal team. The weight of it was felt before it was even opened. In a small, secured chamber, guarded and tense, 3 people sat around the results. A royal lawyer, a senior aide, and a court official tasked with overseeing royal protocol. One of them sliced the envelope open. The paper inside was thin, but its power was immeasurable. They read in silence, line by line, number by number. No one spoke, but one raised brow, one clenched jaw, and then a sigh. The document was signed, sealed again, and locked in a file meant for the king's eyes only. But in a world ruled by whispers, secrecy doesn't last long. That evening, a leak hit the press. Results in, palace preparing statement. The public snapped to attention. Cameras zoomed in. Reporters camped out. All eyes on the gates of Buckingham. What had the DNA revealed? Did it end the rumor or confirm the impossible? Inside the palace, Andrew sat alone, waiting to be briefed. Outside, the nation held its breath. And then, finally, the truth stepped into the light. The revelation. The statement came just after 6 p.m. A royal spokesperson stepped out, notes trembling slightly in hand. A line of cameras pointed at their face. The crowd was silent. The results of the DNA analysis are conclusive. The world froze. There is a confirmed biological link. It hit like lightning. Shock swept through the crowd. Some gasped. Others burst into cheers or disbelief. Phones buzzed. News anchors scrambled to go live. Prince Andrew had a child, a grown adult, a secret no longer. Tabloids lost control. Royal shocker. Heir in hiding. Andrew's DNA bombshell. Internet forums melted. Memes flooded in. And yet, beneath the madness, a deeper shift began. The monarchy had changed. Instantly, irreversibly. Was the claimant entitled to titles, to money, to recognition? Legal teams rushed to interpret the implications, but the emotional impact hit hardest. Supporters of the mystery heir celebrated. Their years of suspicion were justified. Andrew's defenders scrambled. Some cried foul, some went silent, and others simply walked away. Behind palace doors, chaos reigned. And in the public eye, the royal family faced something they weren't prepared for. A truth they could no longer control. Andrew's statement and fallout. The next morning, Prince Andrew released a statement. It was brief, cautious, and void of emotion. I acknowledge the results of the recent DNA testing. I will be addressing this matter privately, with the cooperation of all involved parties. No apology, no warmth, just damage control. But the public wasn't buying it. Social media called it cold. Commentators called it cowardly. A royal scandal of this size needed accountability, but Andrew gave them distance instead. The fallout came fast. Petitions launched, demanding his titles be stripped. News panels debated his future. Charity boards quietly pulled his name from websites. Even within the family, tension rose. Sources claimed King Charles was gravely concerned. Others whispered that William was furious. One insider said the Queen Consort had urged Andrew to step back, again. Meanwhile, the new heir stayed silent. Their lawyer issued a single line, "We welcome the truth. We ask for dignity moving forward." But dignity was hard to find in the storm that followed. The palace spun stories. Courtiers scrambled. But the public had seen the proof. And Andrew's legacy, already dented, had taken its final blow. And just when it felt like it couldn't get worse, it did. Public and expert reactions. The reaction was swift and explosive. Within hours of the announcement, every major broadcaster ran wall-to-wall coverage. The BBC called it a watershed moment. CNN labeled it the royal reckoning. Twitter was a battleground. Hashtags like #RoyalTruth, #HiddenHeir, and DNA Storm exploded. Experts were divided. Royal historians compared it to the abdication crisis. Legal analysts debated inheritance laws. Public relations veterans called it a palace disaster. Psychologists weighed in on the emotional fallout. What does it do to a person, learning their father is a royal who denied them? One asked live on air. Meanwhile, legal experts warned this could open the gates for other claims, other secrets. The British public, once cool toward monarchy drama, now found itself gripped, Some felt betrayed. Others sympathized with the new heir. And some called it karma, justice for a prince many believed had dodged consequences for too long. Across the ocean, American networks added fuel. Talk shows lit up. Hollywood stars posted reactions. Even Harry and Meghan's camp was reportedly watching the development closely. But perhaps the most chilling response came from inside the palace. One unnamed senior aide was quoted saying just 5 words: "This is just the beginning." Long-term impact on Andrew's image. Days passed, but the headlines didn't fade. If anything, they grew sharper. Polls flooded in. Approval ratings plummeted. Prince Andrew, once known as the Queen's favorite, was now the most controversial figure in the monarchy. The DNA test didn't just confirm a child, it confirmed public suspicion. And once trust is broken, it rarely returns. The ripple effect was brutal. Charities distanced themselves. Public events quietly removed him from guest lists. One royal commentator said it best: "This isn't just a scandal, it's a slow erasure." Even among die-hard royal supporters, sympathy was scarce. Social media was relentless. Memes mocked him. Hashtags trended daily. And the phrase "Andrew's mistake" became a punchline across the internet. But beneath the noise was a serious reckoning. Should someone who kept such a truth hidden still hold royal privileges? His future in the royal circle looked bleak. There were whispers that King Charles had held private talks with senior advisors. One insider claimed Charles said, "This may be the final chapter." Andrew's appearances became non-existent. No balcony sightings, no charity rounds, just silence. The palace tried to spin it. One spokesperson said he was spending time with family and navigating a private matter. But the public didn't buy it. This wasn't a private affair anymore. It was national, and it left a permanent scar on the Windsor brand. Even worse, comparisons started flooding in. Other royal scandals resurfaced, but none hit as deep as this. A secret child, a public lie, a DNA test that left no room for doubt, and an institution scrambling to catch up with the truth. Whether Andrew remains a prince in title doesn't matter to most anymore. In the court of public opinion, his legacy is already sealed. And history will remember this, not as a slip, but as a fall. Broader questions. This raises: the DNA results didn't just expose one royal, it opened a door that can't be closed. Suddenly, the entire idea of royal privacy was under fire. If one prince could be hiding a child, how many more secrets were buried behind palace walls? The question echoed: should all public figures be held to this level of transparency? Or is this a dangerous new era where science becomes a weapon? The debate split the public. Some argued that truth is truth, no matter how painful. Others warned it sets a precedent, one where personal history becomes a public battleground. Legal scholars chimed in. Could others now come forward with similar claims? Would DNA testing become a tool for rewriting family trees? Some feared this would unleash a wave of lawsuits. Others said it was overdue justice. The conversation stretched beyond the UK. Across the globe, politicians, celebrities, and other dynasties watched closely. The message was clear: no one is safe from a strand of DNA. For the royals, it raised an even deeper issue. What defines bloodline? And if blood can no longer be hidden, how does tradition survive in an era ruled by truth? The digital age changed everything. Secrets don't stay buried. Facts move faster than protection, and a single piece of paper backed by science can change the course of centuries. In the end, this wasn't just about one heir. It was about all of us and what we demand from those in power. The final twist. Just as the public began to settle into the shock, one last twist ripped the story wide open again. Another letter surfaced, leaked from a royal aide who could no longer stay silent. Inside was mention of a second test, a third party, a hidden clause that had never been disclosed. The implication? Someone else inside the palace had also taken a test, quietly, discreetly, and the results had matched. Not with Andrew, but with someone else close to him. Theories erupted. Was it another royal? A cousin? A cover-up gone wrong? The press exploded all over again. The headlines screamed, "Second DNA bombshell," and "Royal web widens." The claimant, meanwhile, remained calm. Their lawyer confirmed they had no involvement in the leak but welcomed any step that brings clarity. But the palace was silent. Again, and that silence only fueled the fire. Social media turned into a war zone. Every possible connection was dissected. A new wave of whispers began. Names were dropped. Histories were re-examined. And somewhere deep in the palace, phones were ringing off the hook. The final twist was this. The first DNA test had only scratched the surface. The real story? It was still unfolding. With each leak, each confession, the royal family found itself dragged deeper into a mystery that no longer felt like fiction. And just when the world thought it had heard the last of it, the message was clear. The truth was buried in our genes. But this story? It's far from over. The DNA doesn't lie, and neither can the palace anymore. Prince Andrew's secret is now public, and history has been rewritten in a single line of code. But with new whispers already rising, one thing is certain. This isn't the end. It's only the beginning of the royal reckoning.